The Seattle Seahawks are sitting on something the rest of the league still has not fully understood, and it might be about to explode. This was the team oddsmakers said would live around 7 or 8 wins, a nice story in a brutal division, not the group sitting at 13-3 with Super Bowl talk hanging over them. Yet here they are with a scoring attack living near almost 30 points a game, and a defense holding teams around 18 points, doing it in a division where the Rams and Niners were supposed to own the spotlight. Nobody expected Seattle to be the problem everyone has to solve in January, but that is exactly what they have turned into. And the crazy part is how complete this thing looks when you pull back. On one side, you have Sam Darnold, the quarterback everybody wanted to write off, now leading the league in wins over the last 2 seasons, while people still argue if he is truly great or just refuses to be bad at anything. Around him, you see Jackson Smith and Jigba carving up space inside, Cooper Kupp winning short and middle, Rashid Shaheed threatening deep every snap, and the run game with Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet finally punching holes instead of running into walls. Then you remember that behind all of that, Mike McDonald has quietly built a defense that flies around like it has something personal to prove every single week. When you mix all of that together, Seattle looks like the most balanced nightmare in the conference, good enough to win a low-scoring fight and explosive enough to run away from anybody. A win in San Francisco does more than hang a banner. It would lock in home field, the bye week, and the kind of path that turns a hot team into a champion. And that is why this weekend feels so heavy for this roster and this city. But buried inside that shiny record and those wild Super Bowl odds is a strange split in who this offense actually is. Because for all that talent and all that firepower, there are long stretches where the Seahawks disappear early and then flip a switch later. And that split personality is exactly what we need to break down next. But before we get into that, hit that like and subscribe button for more Seahawks and all the NFL content. Let's aim for 500 likes on this video. For a team this explosive, the strangest thing about the Seattle Seahawks is how quietly they start games now. Early in the year, they were at the top of the league in first half points, sitting around a little over 3 points every drive to open games, calm, scripted, in control. Since the loss to the Rams, that has flipped. Over a 6-game win streak, they have only managed 2 touchdowns before halftime, which sounds almost impossible for an offense with this much talent. Drives stall, red zone chances vanish, and you look up midway through the second quarter, wondering how a top seed can look this flat on the scoreboard. Then the whistle blows for the second half, and it feels like somebody flips a switch. The same group that crawled through the first 2 quarters suddenly looks like a top 10 attack again, ranking near the top of the league in points per drive after halftime, and sitting high in the passing efficiency numbers. Long marches show up, explosive plays finally land, and the defense gets the breathing room it deserves. It is thrilling when it works, but it is also draining. Fans know the pattern now, that weird mix of frustration and faith, watching Jason Myers bail out slow starts with field goals while they wait for the offense to finally punch in that one drive that breaks the game open. That split personality is where the real danger hides as the games get bigger. In January, you do not always get the luxury of a sleepy first half and a furious finish, because better teams turn early chances into real leads and force you into tighter windows and riskier throws. Defenses have already started sitting deeper, inviting long, patient drives and trying to squeeze mistakes out of every snap. And you can see how thin the margin becomes when early possessions end with nothing. All of that pressure lands right back on Sam Darnold, because the way he handles those slow starts, the way he manages risk when they are chasing rhythm, is the one question that keeps circling this team, and that is exactly where we need to go next. The wildest thing about this whole Seahawks rise is this simple truth. Everything swings on Sam Darnold, the same quarterback people once thought they had completely figured out. A few years ago, the label on him was simple. Too many mistakes, too many wild throws, another talented arm that would never fully settle. Then he went to Minnesota, dropped over 4,300 passing yards and 35 touchdowns. In one season, made the Pro Bowl, and walked away with a Most Improved award from the writers. Now in Seattle, he has stacked over 3,800 yards and around 25 touchdown passes, while sitting near the top of the win column again. And yet every conversation around this team still finds its way back to one question. Can he keep that daring style from tipping into disaster when everything is on the line? To really feel why this version of Sam Darnold hits so hard, you have to trace where he came from. He came into the league with the Jets, walked straight into chaos, bounced to Carolina for another reset, then spent a season in San Francisco, standing behind Brock Purdy and soaking up every detail of how Kyle Shanahan built game plans and handled pressure. That year was not about numbers. It was about wiring his brain a different way. After that, he took over the Minnesota Vikings job, proved he could carry a contending offense for a full season, and then signed a massive but flexible deal in Seattle that let the front office believe in him while still keeping an exit door if it went wrong. Fans were split. Some saw a late bloom star, others saw a bridge quarterback. But inside the building, the staff leaned into his growth, not his past, and built the entire identity of this offense around what he does well when his mind is clear and his feet are calm. The problem is his game will probably never be fully clean, and that is where the tension lives. Sam Darnold still trusts his arm more than most. He still tries to fit throws into tight windows, and that is how you end up with the season where he is flirting with around 20 total giveaways and sitting high on any list you pull up for interceptions and fumbles. You can feel the ghost of that rough final week in Minnesota against the Lions. In the way people talk about him, you can feel the echo of that earlier. 4-pick night against the Rams whenever he lets one sail a little late outside. The staff knows you cannot just tell him to stop being aggressive, so they have attacked the riddle from another angle, changing when he has to take risks, how often he is in obvious passing downs, and how much help he gets from the ground game and his playmakers. And that shift in philosophy is where the story turns next. Once defenses decided they were done getting burned over the top, everything about how the Seattle offense looked had to change. Safeties backed up, an extra defensive back walked onto the field, and those easy deep shots to Jackson Smith-Njigba and Rashid Shaheed stopped showing up on the call sheet. Coverage started to look like a blanket, soft underneath, crowded deep, almost begging Sam Darnold to keep taking the checkdowns and handoffs. That was the test. Could this group live in 10 and 15-yard plays, stack patient drives, and still feel dangerous without those 70-yard haymakers that had everybody buzzing in the first half of the season? The answer showed up in the way Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet started taking over games. Instead of running into stacked boxes, they suddenly had light fronts and space, and they punished it. You saw long nights where each back pushed past that 100 rushing yards mark, something Seattle had not seen in years, turning 2nd and 9 into 3rd and 2 over and over again. The offensive line, even with moving parts at tackle, began to lean on people, opening lanes on wide runs and pounding inside when defenses got tired of chasing. Off those looks, Cooper Kupp and Jackson Smith-Njigba worked the empty grass behind the linebackers, while Rashid Shaheed still ran vertical routes that forced safeties to respect the deep ball even when the ball never left underneath. Every snap started to feel like a choice for the defense, and none of the options felt safe. That shift in style is what makes this offense so hard to label now, and it is also what quietly supercharges the other side of the ball. When Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet are chewing clock, when Sam Darnold is taking what the coverage gives him and letting Cooper Kupp and Jackson Smith-Njigba do the dirty work in space. Mike McDonald's defense stays fresh and mean, waiting to close the door. You can feel how everything connects: the patient drives, the field position, the way one long march sets up a defensive chokehold on the next series. And if you really want to understand why Seattle scares so many coaches right now, you have to look straight at that defense, because that is where the whole thing starts to feel unfair. The scary truth about the Seattle Seahawks is that all the talk about the offense might still be looking in the wrong direction. The side of the ball that really tilts the field is the one Mike McDonald controls, a defense that walks onto the grass like it already knows how the story ends. They do not just hold teams to low scores, they squeeze the life out of drives, force long third downs, and make every yard feel expensive. You can feel it in the way quarterbacks start speeding up their reads, in the way coordinators run out of ideas by the third quarter. This group is the reason Seattle never feels out of a game, even on nights when the points from the offense show up late. Up front, The names alone tell you why offenses hate seeing this jersey. DeMarcus Lawrence sets the edge with real power, turning speed into shock and walking tackles back into their own pocket. Inside, Leonard Williams, Byron Murphy, and Jaron Reed crush the middle, closing run lanes before they even open and pushing centers straight into the face of the passer. Behind them, Ernest Jones plays like a traffic cop with bad intentions, reading runs before the handoff and cutting off crossing routes before they can fully develop. Then there is the back end, where Nick Emenwari moves around like a cheat code, lining up in the slot, near the box, even off the edge, while Kobe Bryant and Ty Okada clean up everything that leaks through with sure tackling and smart angles. Every level has someone who can flip a play by themselves, and together they feel like one long wall of problems. What that creates on Sundays is a very specific kind of pressure for the rest of the league. You are not just trying to score on Seattle, you are trying to survive long enough to even get in range, while knowing one mistake could give Sam Darnold and that offense a short field they do not even need. Red zone trips turn into field goals, deep shots get swallowed, and by the time the fourth quarter hits, you can see opponents running out of answers. And yet, even with a defense built like this, even with a record that matches any contender in football, the national noise still leans toward other brands and other helmets, which is exactly why Seattle has quietly become the most dangerous, overlooked threat in the entire league. Across the league, the loud conversations still orbit the Niners, Rams, Patriots, Texans, even the Broncos, while the Seattle Seahawks keep getting treated like a side story instead of a main threat. Turn on a studio show and you hear long segments about other rosters, other quarterbacks, other coaches, even though Seattle is sitting with one of the very best records and one of the strongest point gaps in football, outscoring opponents by well over a touchdown a game. Across the season, they have already gone on the road to beat teams fighting for their playoff lives, survived physical matchups, and stacked statement wins, yet the tone around them still feels like surprise instead of respect. That gap between what people say and what this team keeps doing on the field is exactly where the danger lives. The same people who now list Seattle near the top of the title boards are the ones who, a few months ago, thought this roster would be happy just sneaking into the playoff picture. Mike McDonald has taken that expectation and turned it into a possible #1 seed in only his second year, building a culture where nobody seems impressed by their own success because they felt written off from the start. Sam Darnold has quietly moved from question mark to steady winner. Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet have reshaped the ground game, and guys like Jackson Smith-Njigba, Cooper Kupp, and Rashid Shaheed keep tilting matchups, but the national awards talk still leans toward other coaches in other markets. That is what makes this group so unsettling for opponents. They play like a team that hears every slight, but they also carry themselves like they expect to be the ones still standing at the end. If Seattle finishes the job and locks in the top seed, the road to the Super Bowl would run through a building where this defense feeds off the crowd, and this offense finally gets to script games on its terms, with Jason Myers turning long drives into points, and the pass rush turning noise into pressure. For any visiting team, that means flying across the country to face Nick Emenwari, Ernest Jones, Leonard Williams, Byron Murphy, and Jaron Reed in front of a fan base that has been waiting for this kind of run since the last title window closed. The truth is, though, none of that is guaranteed, because one bad break up front, one key defender limping, or one explosive playmaker not cleared to go can flip this from a dream setup into a minefield. And the health of this roster and the hidden edges around it are the next part of this story that really decide how far the Seahawks can actually go. For all the talk about schemes and stats, the Seattle Seahawks know their season might come down to something much simpler: who is actually able to line up when the ball is kicked. The latest injury report was a reminder that this run is balancing on a very thin wire, with key starters banged up at exactly the spots you least want to worry about heading into a game of this size: offensive line, secondary, special teams. Every one of those rooms has felt the strain over the past few weeks. On paper, Seattle looks loaded and ready to roll. But inside the building, they are tracking every hamstring, every knee, every player who wakes up a little sore and tries to fight through it. Because one more name, moving from questionable to out, can change everything about how this team has to play. Up front, it starts with Charles Cross, the franchise tackle who has been stuck on the sideline since that brutal moment against the Colts when he hurt his hamstring on a field goal try. He missed the Rams game, he missed Carolina, and he is not expected to go against San Francisco, which pushes even more weight onto Josh Jones, the swing tackle who has quietly held his own while managing his own knee and ankle problems. If he has any setback, Seattle might be leaning on a young depth tackle in the biggest regular season game of the year, and that is a lot to ask, no matter how confident the coaches sound. On the back end, Kobe Bryant has been fighting through a knee issue after playing some of the best ball of his career as a tackling and ball-hawking safety, and seeing his name slide toward doubtful forces Ty Okada into an even larger role. He has grown a lot this season, cleaning up missed tackles and reading routes faster. But the idea of losing Kobe Bryant for long stretches in a matchup where the middle of the field is always under attack is something this staff has to plan around on every call sheet. Then there is Rashid Shaheed, the player who can swing a game without even touching the ball on offense. He was slammed to the turf by Michael Jackson and dropped into the concussion protocol. And for a while, it looked like Seattle might walk into San Francisco without their purest speed threat. Now he is trending back, and that is massive, because his presence alone changes how punters kick, how coverage units line up, and how deep safeties have to respect the vertical threat. Add in Jason Myers drilling long kicks, and a coverage unit that has turned returns into hidden yardage all year, and you can see how this third phase might quietly carry just as much weight as the headline stars. All of that sets the stage for what comes next, because when you mix a banged-up line, a patched-together secondary, an explosive returner fighting to get cleared, and a winner take all trip to San Francisco, you get one simple question that will define the next chapter. What does it actually look like if the Seahawks stay healthy enough for one night and finally go fully nuclear on the biggest stage of their season? In San Francisco, everything the Seattle Seahawks have built comes down to one game that decides the division, the top seed, and a week of rest, with Sam Darnold facing Brock Purdy in the biggest regular season test of his career. For Seattle to truly go nuclear, the offense has to start fast behind a steady Darnold, with Jackson Smith-Njigba, Cooper Kupp, Rashid Shaheed, Kenneth Walker, and Zach Charbonnet controlling the ball, while the defense led by DeMarcus Lawrence, Leonard Williams, Byron Murphy, Jaron Reed, Ernest Jones, Nick Emenwari, Kobe Bryant, and Ty Okada suffocates San Francisco, and Jason Myers cashes and drives. But if the Seahawks fall into another slow start and Darnold is forced to chase Purdy, Christian McCaffrey, and George Kittle from behind, the turnover fears return, and this shot at home field can vanish, making this game the tipping point between Seattle being seen as a nice story or the team that completely reshapes the playoff picture.